sit there all morning and say, hold on.
Feel good?
You good?
Yes, they weren't ready.
Well, please stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Roll call, Mr. Crossley.
Present.
Mr. Lucier, Mr. Yoakum, I believe, is on vacation. Okay, today's meeting is, I'm going to turn it over to John Spur for a minute, and we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm just going to take a minute to try to frame the legal issues that we need to talk about this morning. When Vermillion County shops for ambulance service, the taxpayers have placed certain demands on the county to provide them with a certain level of ambulance service. They want fast response times, and they want a certain level of responder to come and treat them when they call for an ambulance. And so the tension when we shop for ambulance service is that Vermillion County by itself doesn't have enough runs, that there's not enough money to be generated from operating an ambulance service in the county to provide the number of ambulances and the level of personnel in the places that the taxpayers demand. So what the commissioners have to do is offer a subsidy if we want to have paramedics, if we want to have ambulances in the north end of the county, if we want to have 2 ambulances, for example. The service provider says, I can't make enough money operating a business to provide you that many ambulances and paramedics. So the negotiation is usually with the county, how much subsidy will the county offer to get what level of service we want to have for the county. And so once we pick a service provider, that provider's getting 2 sources of money. They're getting the annual subsidy from the county that's in the contract, and then they're making however much money they can make operating their ambulance service. And so in our contract, there's a clause that says if the amount of money that they can make operating their business changes by 5%, that they have the right to come back and ask for more subsidy. So 2 meetings ago, our service provider gave us a letter that said, hey, I believe the conditions have now been met, that the per run revenue has dropped by 5%, so I want to reopen negotiations as to what my subsidy is. So that's why we set this meeting today to work on those negotiations. So that's what we've got to talk about today is are we willing to increase the subsidy or not, and if so, how much, and if how much, where's that money going to come from? So that's what I wanted to talk about.
Thank you, John. Eric, Sean, if you'd like to come up and talk about what's taking place and...
Sure. So we need to talk about medical reimbursement to start off with. And all this information can be received off the internet from anyone that wants to look at it. What we bill by is what's called HCPCS codes. These are Medicare codes that say what we will bill for. There are certain codes that ambulances are allowed to use. Just like if you go to the doctor and say you have shoulder surgery, they will use a code to bill medically what that shoulder surgery was. There's a specific code for each individual item. So when we look at ambulance billing, there's only 6 codes that we typically are allowed to use. And one of them is a mileage code. It doesn't matter if it's paramedic mileage, basic mileage, and Medicare reimburses at $7.62 a mile. Indiana Medicaid will only reimburse at $1.25 a mile. For a ALS non-emergent run, Medicare will reimburse $268.66. Indiana Medicaid will only reimburse at $95.84. This is set by the population and zip code. So depending on where you are, if you're in an urban environment, it's actually less money than that. But we're considered a rural environment. For an ALS emergency run, an ALS 1 emergency run, Medicare will reimburse $425.38. Indiana Medicaid will reimburse $160.84. For a BLS non-emergency run, Medicare will reimburse $223.89. Medicaid will reimburse $95.84. For a BLS emergency run, Medicare will reimburse $358.22. In Indiana, that's Medicare. Medicaid will reimburse $110.84. For an ALS2 emergency run, Medicare will reimburse $615.69, where Indiana Medicaid will only do $160.84. Now the problem with this is Medicare says that if you have Medicare, so I'll pick John Spur. John Spur has Medicare. Medicare says these are the most amounts that you can be billed for that patient. So as an ambulance provider, no matter what medications I use, we are required to carry certain medications to be a paramedic ambulance. It doesn't matter what we use on you. Medicare says if you're an ALS1 emergency run, they will pay up to $425 for that run. However, you have to pay your copay of it. So Medicare will only really pay about 75% of that $425. So they'll pay a little over $300 for that run, and then you're responsible for the rest. Well, if you have a secondary insurance, like a Blue Cross Blue Shield subsidy, then they normally pick up that additional money. If you have Medicaid as a secondary insurance, Medicaid says, well, Medicare already paid you more than we were going to pay you, so you're not going to be able to collect that. Oh, and since this is a federal program, you can't bill the patient for that amount of money. So you have to write it off. Because the federal government says if you're going to collect Medicare and Medicaid money, which the majority of people in this county are on either Medicare, Medicaid, or they don't have insurance, you can't collect any of the additional money. So from the statistics, last year, and these are as of yesterday's date, because I compared 2019 as of October 13th, 2019 and October 13th, 2020. As of October 2019, as of October 13, 2019, the ambulance service, well, before we get into this, the ambulance service has to have a fee for service. That's how we're reimbursed. And what we have to do is, by those HCPCS codes I was just telling you about, we have to go through and look at the run volume for those runs, what we build and what it costs for that service. So we have to take into consideration what the supplies are on the ambulance, what the ambulance cost is, what the fuel is, what the insurance is, what the personnel is. All of that information has to go in, and then we look at the runs for the previous year, and then we set our billing rates. Medicare says you have to do this yearly. If you don't, you can go to federal prison. So we do this yearly on the average. As of October 13th last year, we had billed $1,867,532.66. However, we'd only received from all the insurance companies, Medicare and Medicaid, $553,168.06. So on top of the subsidy, which was just under $400,000 last year, we had just a little over $900,000 is what our operating budget was approximately at this time last year. For the same information from 2020, as of yesterday, we had billed only $1,371,622.59. Out of what was billed, we have collected $321,182.03. There's a difference of $231,968.03 from 2019's run volume to 2020's run volume, what's collected. Our subsidies are a little, what, $411,000, I think, Amy, this year, $411,008.
Right.
So our operating budget is over $200,000 short from where we were the previous year. When we submitted our bid, we submitted it on the numbers that we received on the run volume and what our cost and fees for services were. So we based it on what our costs are for all that equipment and personnel, what the run volume should generate, because we're not here to try to cause the county or get a windfall from the county from being their ambulance provider. That's not what we're here. We're not trying to gouge anyone. We're trying to be able to operate the business at break even. That's where we are. So we're at a negative of $231,986.03 as of today. And the billable differences for the runs that we haven't made because of the COVID pandemic, and the difference from the year before to this year is almost $500,000 difference. It's $495,473.07 is what the decreased run volume, which would have generated revenue. So if you see that, that's about less than half of what we potentially would have collected. So all I was making the county aware of is that at the time, because we had definitely met the 5% clause, we wanted to open up negotiations for some to see if we could increase some of the subsidy just for this year, because this is a different year. No one has ever planned for a pandemic to the value that we've had right now. And all this information out there, and I sit on the board, Mark sits on the board for the Healthcare Coalition for District 7, and we get a lot of information about this, and this pandemic is only going to get worse. I'm not going to be the boy that cried wolf. However, if you look at the historical data that's going on right now, hospitals are starting to fill up. At the beginning of the pandemic, everyone thought, oh, well, we need all these ventilators, we need these hospitals. So they set up hospitals, 10 hospitals, they didn't get used. However, now we can go in and look and see where the hospital statuses are in our area, and they're starting to fill up. Just yesterday, Union Hospital, their COVID unit was full. And it's 32 beds. And there's 2 COVID patients in Clinton. There are 2 COVID patient beds in Clinton that are set up right now. But those hospitals are full. So if we have someone with COVID, they may have to go to regional. I don't remember what regional's bed status was, and they didn't say it in our meeting. But Union did report their 32 beds are full. Clinton has 2 beds. The next closest hospital would be, depending on where you are in the county, could be Clay County, could be going up to Williamsport. So all we were asking is to negotiate. We're not asking for the full amount. We're just asking for a little bit of help to get us through this year, because we are down, like I said, $231,986.03 from the previous year. I mean, that's a huge hit to the budget to be able to have the paramedics in all the ambulances stocked. And we're required as a paramedic ambulance service to have those items on the truck. So whether they expire or not, we just had this conversation with one of the physicians yesterday, is, well, can't you just take your medicines back to the hospital and give it to them and they can use it before it expires? You can't do that. The FDA says you're not allowed to take medicines out of a hospital, put it on an ambulance, and then give it back to the hospital to be used. Once those expire, they have to be wasted. And there's no way to, you have to purchase new medications, and all those costs have all gone up because of this pandemic. I mean, where we were paying $8 and $9 for a box of gloves, we're paying $20 for the same box of gloves now. So that's all we're here is to ask ask the county for some additional subsidy for this year only, just to help with where we are.
How much are you asking?
Well, that's what we're here to negotiate. When I gave you the letter, it was like $149,000, I believe.
What would you accept?
What are you offering to help us with?
That's what we're here to negotiate.
Huh.
Because whatever we agreed to, we had to get approval from the council to pay you, of course. How much you say? What you looking at?
As of right now, we are between 19 and 20. We're $231,986.03 difference.
Is that taken into account all the Medicaid, Medicare?
Right.
Discounted payments, all that crap?
Right. So, like we were talking about, if, say Eric, I'm just picking on you because you're there. Eric has Medicaid. Eric has a heart condition. Eric goes into cardiac arrest. We would intubate him, give him a breathing tube. We would start an IV. We would give him lots of medicines. That bill could be $1,500 or $1,800. And he's got Medicaid. They would pay $160.82. That's it. And all the other cost of all the medications and everything else you use, you have to write off. So, I mean, you could, as of last year, at this time, like I said, we collected $553,000. We billed $1.8 million. So we had to write off $1.3 million because of what we were not able to, patients didn't collect, patients didn't pay, or contractual obligations, because Medicare and Medicaid are the biggest payers in this county, and they say you have to pay what, or you have to accept what we'll take.
Actually, if we request the whole 149,000, is the council prepared to pay that much money, or?
Well, it does take 4 of us to approve it, and so I personally cannot speak for 4 of us to pass that. So I mean, it will be up to, you will have 4 votes, and I can't guarantee or like can't say one way or the other how they will vote. I'm here to collect information to take back to them and listen, but I can't. They know this is on the table, but as far as saying they will affirm or deny it, I can't give you that. I don't know.
Do you have any questions, Ashley? That can answer, or hopefully answer?
I mean, I've been listening. Compared to the 2019 runs,
Yes.
how many are we down
193
for the year?
for the year.
Is there always fluctuation though between the,
Typically from 18 to 19, there was a little fluctuation, like not even a 5% fluctuation, I don't believe. This is a dramatic fluctuation, and a lot of it has to do with this pandemic, because people were not going to the hospital because they didn't want to go. They didn't want to be there by themselves. All the hospitals had restrictions, and it would not surprise me to see those hospitals come back with those restrictions again of, if you come to the hospital, you're there by yourself until you get discharged. Just because all the data out there is showing that the flu, we're getting ready to get into flu season, and this is just going to get worse. Even with the trials of the antiviral stuff out there for COVID, I have some friends that are actually had their second shot. They're in their second stage of the trial, and just one of the other major medical manufacturers is shutting down their trial because of the adverse reactions. That just came out this morning, I believe. Pfizer's the only one, I believe, that's still in trial, and they were looking at even taking the vaccine down to 12-year-old kids, is the latest information. That just came out also, but they're looking to add those. But there's not a great fluctuation like this, but like we were just talking, Mark and I were just talking before the meeting, for last month alone, from from August of 2019 to August 2020, there were 49 transports difference.
what's the difference from 2018 to 19 to 20? Was there a decrease from 18 to 19 and then 19 to 20?
There was a little decrease from 18 to 19, and we attributed it all in the beginning because we were new, so people were calling 911 and getting us. And I mean, there's like a 5% drop, if that, or not even 5%, I don't believe. I don't know.
Do you have total runs for the years that you've been operating?
Let me see if I can get to it. Amy would have a copy because I've given the commissioners a copy every month of it. I gotta see if I can log in. I don't have 20.
It looks like Clinton's pretty steady. I mean, sometimes it's up and down, but Clinton's probably your busiest place, it looks like.
Clinton has always been the
Is
busiest.
And then you get up here, you get to the Cuga, and sometimes if you add Perrysville and Covington in the same place, it's a little higher. But all looks like Clinton's your biggest, which is the biggest city in the county, and you got the nursing home and hospital. You get the most runs. From January to June, Cuga pretty well stayed. Went from lowest was 10 to highest was 18 to then. And then from July to now, it's like 6, 9, and 8. But, let's see.
Do these numbers include the transports? These just from them?
No, this is all 911 calls. We don't do, we do very few transports. We only do emergency transports unless the BLS crew isn't doing rides. Because we don't do the typical.
So when you
Sure.
say you're down for the like 100, for the year, that's complete run?
No, that's 911 versus 911. Transports do not incorporate in this because we don't do that many transfers. We have done some in the past, like if they call and say we have a STEMI, that's a 911 call because that's life threatening. If they have a stroke that we need to get to the other, or trauma that they call 911 and we go on. But we typically don't do a lot of the, unless we have, that has nothing to factor in with any of this. And the hospital here is not sending out as many patients. I don't know if you're aware, but the hospital here now has a hospitalist on all the time, that their job is to take care of people in the hospital. And they also have more people coming here, like Dr. Lynch is coming here, I believe 3 times a month now to do surgeries. They have an ortho clinic here now open certain days. They're bringing a lot of the services that people were having to go to Terre Haute for. They're keeping them here in Clinton, which is great. The hospital is growing by leaps and bounds with the services they have there. One of the biggest things that they needed to add was a hospitalist, because that way you have someone that manages that patient care from the time they get admitted from the emergency room till they get discharged. They take care of all the complexities of the patient in the during their stay, which is great. And we do have hospitalists now, and I believe the coverage is, I think they're in-house like 16 hours out of the day, and they're on call at nighttime.
You got Hugo, Newport, Perrysville, Covington, Universal, Blandford, Hillsdale, St. Renice, and Dana, but is Clinton and Fairview combined?
Clinton's Fairview's combined because their zip code's the same.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the email where I sent it to them about the 2017 run volume.
Amy, while he's doing it, have you ever checked back to see when that was first put in there, that we would, if runs was down, we'd subsidize that?
I can.
I think that was always been in there as long as I can remember, but
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but I can do that.
can you do that?
I'll email everybody.
We never had a pandemic or was expecting anything like this to happen, but it's done there.
Check it out and get back to you.
All right.
Eric, if we just throw a figure out to you, could you live with 75,000? You're asking for 150, say. Could you live with half of it?
Yeah, anything's better than where we're at.
Of course, we'd have to take that to the council, you know, understand that?
Right.
Correctly, John, we're following procedure, we had to negotiate because he asked, correct?
Yeah, our contract requires us to engage with each other in good faith, and he's invoked that clause, and you have to engage. And now, you're not obligated to reach an agreement, but you're obligated to try in good faith to resolve the problem. Now, the downside of it is if you cut him too lean and he goes out of business, then we have to search for another provider.
I understand.
So.
I'll maybe get an answer real quick about the number around
What-
17. I just had to pull a report.
I can tell you that in 2001, when I started as county attorney, we were paying subsidies then,
Yes.
so I know that.
I was thinking it's been on there for a while, we just kept it on there.
It comes up every time there's a negotiation, is why do we pay
Yeah.
for service? And the
Just-
answer is that the service that the taxpayers want is greater than what the actual business available in the county would provide.
What funds we had to take that out of, we to pay that in?
You just tell me what fund you wanna request it from. You can do county general, you can do public safety, that's your call, where to ask. We can ask for multiple funds, and then the council can choose which fund.
You could do that, but then, you know, what
What
you
was
feel
it?
comfortable with.
72 transport increase. in
You know, we
19.
could, like you said,
For the year.
multiple funds.
I need to go back and
Small
look at,
one.
let me go back and edit this real quick.
Take a little bit out of
County
each
general and
one.
public safety.
Yeah, little on public
Yeah,
safety, little on
increase to
county general.
72 rounds, but that's for the year.
75,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me,
You need to make a motion.
Hmm?
You need to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we request $75,000 out of multiple funds.
From county general and public safety.
Yeah.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye. Did you hear
Can I
what?
add something?
Did you hear, yes, Mark?
Amy, you're setting up a CARES Act fund, right?
Yes,
And that's gonna get that $502,000 put into it.
yes.
Would it be possible to pay it out of that fund, and that way you would not decrease any of the county's existing lines?
If that's possible, I'll be in
That's a
favor of that.
small fund.
Mhm.
That money came for salaries that were paid, that were gonna be paid anyway.
You wanna refigure a claim, either the multiple fund or the CARES Act if possible, you gonna change that to that?
Once it's in that fund, you can do whatever you want with it, right, Amy?
Yeah, I'm a little confused when you do this research. I thought we had to move it to county general, and then we can do whatever we want. But either way,
Right.
still we're putting it into county general.
Now, where's that CARES Act fund come from, Mark? Can you explain that?
That is the reimbursement for law enforcement salaries. They allowed EMS, law enforcement, public health, and my salary could have been reimbursed up to the maximum amount that you still had coming, which was 502,000 plus. And so by just using 4 months of law enforcement salary in the sheriff's department, we were able to max it out. And so that, if you look at it, those salaries are gonna be paid. That's money that's paid every year. Once it's paid, it's gone, it's out of the deal. They're giving that back to us now. So, and their instruction was to start an account in the county, which would be the CARES account.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe that the offices that have already spent money out of their budgets will be reimbursed that money, Amy?
The way I understand it is, I can take all the payments that we've already paid and move those claims to show them paid out of CARES Act, which would then zero us out. Or you can move it to county general. You can't move it to health department, even though they bought items. You can
Oh, okay.
only move it to county general, but then you can use it for whatever you want. That's the way I understand
Okay.
it. But I think it needs a little more research, just to make sure
But either way, it's $502,000 coming into the
that you
county.
can do
which
with whatever you want now.
Be dispersed, so that way it wouldn't affect our overall general fund, public public safety money, certified shares, any of that kind of stuff, they would just be where they are.
And actually, to compare 2018 to 2020, there's 177 runs less this year than 18. So there's 193 less from 19 and 177 less than 18 as of yesterday's date.
So your fluctuation would be it went up in 19?
It went up to 72 runs by year, but it went down in 20, but we're still from 18 the same calendar dates to 20 same calendar dates, there's 177 run difference.
So if I requested that out of multiple funds, that would fall.
Yeah, and then
Everything
177.
would fall into it.
The CARES Act, yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be kind
You
of
have any
general.
questions or
I'll
anything
find
I
that
can answer?
document and send it to
Maybe?
you.
Well,
John,
I
to
just have a
research it,
couple.
but-
One is, I assume that the commissioners have received information financially to validate what's being presented here today before you make a decision. The other question I have, you spoke earlier, I think I caught it, that Medicare and Medicaid only pay so much per mile.
Yes.
What do you charge per mile?
I believe it's $15 a mile. I'd have to go back and look. I don't do the billing. I run the EMS operations. We have.
I was thinking it was 25, and I'm not sure.
No, I don't believe it's 25. I think it's 15, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't run the billing operations. That's a whole other side of the house. We keep them separate because that way one can't influence the other. And that's the way, when we dealt with the EMS attorneys, because we had an audit by Page Wolfberg and Worth to come in and do a HIPAA compliance, and also, do we meet the compliances for the ambulance industry? And one of the things that we've done prior to them coming, and we have a report from them about our HIPAA compliance too, is we pay these consultants to come in and make sure that we're, doing everything correctly. And one of the things that they point out, it's good that we have a billing side of the house, and that's all they deal with. I have no influence on them, they have no influence on me, and then I run the EMS operations, because that way, what problems happen with ambulance services where you have one person running it all, and then one operation tells the other how to do things, and it may not be up to par. So we have them separated for a reason, because the EMS operations does their thing, the billing takes the information that the EMS operation gives them and appropriately bills the patient, codes the patient. Because if you look, historically, ambulance services are riddled with fraud. We're a rounding error in the federal government's budget. But it's one of the things that's been hit with fraud the most, because there's been ambulance services that don't do it right. You can look at Texas. They had over 150 ambulance services in Houston area doing ambulance runs. And they were saying, hey, we'll take you to dialysis, Mark. We'll buy you a big screen TV. We want your Medicare money. And they put him in the front of the truck and drive him, and he didn't meet medical necessity. Because Medicare's version is, you bill us, we'll pay it, and then if we paid you wrong, we'll come after it later. It's a pay and chase thing. But what they've done now is they've caught on to all these ambulance services, so they put a moratorium on starting new ambulance services. They won't approve other ambulance services because of all these people that did things illegal.
Well, have you, with this pandemic and all that, and less calls and whatnot, have you done anything to tighten your belt up a little bit in your business?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I've worked more shifts so we don't pay out overtime for people. I've
Been a business first, that's why.
we've trimmed the fat as much as we can. We, if we need supplies, we are exactly what we need. We have some extra in case we say we have a cardiac arrest and we need additional medications right then to put the ambulance back in service. We used to have more there. Now we have just enough to restock the drug box once.
So is this like every year we're gonna face this, or is
No.
this just something this year
No,
only?
this is just this year only because of this incident. If we would have stayed on the projected numbers like we had budgeted on, I would not be here today.
Okay.
Even if we would have been here with, say we could have taken a 70 run volume decrease, we would have been able to absorb that. It's just, we've absorbed a lot. And it's just not to the point where we can do it. That's why we brought this to the county's attention, because it was in the contract. But trust me, I don't like being here asking for this. I mean, we trim the fat, we cut cost as much as we can, we're doing everything we can to cut the cost down. You know, we're even buying our medications and stuff from other suppliers now because they have a better price than our normal supplier does. So before I order something, I check 4 different places. Whoever has it the cheapest is where I'm getting it from, because it's the same quality of stuff. So, you know, they've got the same manufacturer, but, you know, like auto parts. Napa has it at one price, O'Reilly has it another, you know, AutoZone's a different. We shop around until we get the lowest price for the requirements that we have to have. And the state does mandate what we're required to carry on the ambulance. You know, to have that paramedic drug box, it's about $60,000 worth of drugs and stuff that's in there to have a paramedic ambulance, not including the heart monitor.
I don't want to get off the beaten path here a little bit, but can you explain what you accept in payment and you don't accept? I had one customer was complaining about the $20 a mile, and you wouldn't pay this one, but then his daughter got involved because they was not probably capable enough to make it, you know, what they're talking about. They told me yesterday they got everything paid.
Okay, so because we receive money from Medicare and Medicaid, we have to do our due diligence in billing patients. So we have to bill for the fee for service. That's why we go through every year and look at our run volume. We look at every one of these HCPCS codes. So we'll go back and like say ALS emergent runs, ALS ones, that's HCPCS code A0427. We will go back and look at all the runs we did for the year on A01427. And then we will look at the cost of the service. And then we divide it up amongst the types of calls, either BLS emergent, ALS emergent, or ALS2. And then whatever it costs to have all this, to have those services for the year, the payroll, the equipment that we're required to have, the fuel, the stations, everything, then we divide it out over the percentage of those runs for the year, and that's what we set our billing rate at for that HCPCS code. So then we set, this is, you know, X is what our billing code, or it says for that code is going to be. So we have to do that. And then what we do, Medicare says if Harry has private insurance, and say Harry's got a $2,000 deductible, we pick him up on January 1st, he obviously hasn't met his deductible, we have to bill Harry for the full price of our run. We have to try to collect all that money from Harry for that run, what the cost of service is. If we do not try to do that, and then say Harry gets Medicare, then they come back and say, well, that could be a kickback. Oh, we're going to do this for you because we want that federal government money. Now, it's not the way it really happens. I mean, sometimes it happens that way, but they can consider that as a kickback, and then I can go to federal prison. Actually, the billers will go to federal prison first. But so we have to try to recuperate. The federal government in statute says you have to do this. You have to try to collect from all that. That's why we have a policy in place where we send you a bill. Then 30 days later, we send you another bill. Then 60 days later, we send you another bill. Then 90 days later, we send you another bill. And then you get one about 120 days that says if you don't give us something or set up a payment plan, we're going to send you to collections. And then we send it to collections because the federal government says we have to try to collect that money. Just like if you have Medicare and you don't have a secondary insurance. If we collect that 75% from Medicare, we still have to try to collect that 25% from you. And we have to show that we've tried. So that's why we send those bills on, because the federal government says, if you don't, you're getting a kickback. And there are a lot of ambulance services people that are in federal prisons because of doing it wrong.
Brenda, you got a question?
When you get called out and the person chooses not to be transported to the hospital, do you get paid for that call?
Right now, some insurance companies will pay us if we go there and we treat the patient on scene and then don't transport them. That is new. Prior to about 1.5 years ago, unless you transport the patient, you get no payment at all. And now, what they release it some, and Anthem Blue Cross is one of the ones that will do this. They're realizing, now this is a shocker, the insurance industry is saying, if a paramedic comes and starts an IV on a diabetic, brings their sugar level up, then we don't incur an ER cost. Then we don't incur an ER physician cost just because their sugar was low. Yeah, maybe we ought to pay that, or in the ambulance bill. Maybe we ought to pay the ambulance for that. So they're starting to just now, but that is completely new to where we can treat on scene and be reimbursed. Now, say you don't have insurance and we come to your house. We still, because we provided something to you, we still have to bill you for that run.
And what about Medicare, if they're on Medicare?
Medicare will not pay for it.
So,
So we end up eating it, because Medicare only pays for transports
how
right
many
now.
times does that happen?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look, a lot. There's a lot of diabetics that we go to, or even people that just fall out of bed that we go pick up and put back in bed.
Right.
And we don't charge for those. I mean, we go to a lot of lift assist.
Car wrecks that.
Yeah, car wrecks that no one's injured, you know, we don't, just because Ashley was involved in a wreck and Mark called 911, it's not Ashley doesn't have to pay us because we came there to check her out. We get a refusal and we go on, and no one gets billed for those runs.
Well, we'll do some checking, see what money we can get, and then we'll let you know, and then I take it to the council for their approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions this morning over here? Moving to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Thank you.